Welcome to the Wellness Revolution podcast.
Welcome back to another episode. Thanks for joining me for the Wellness Revolution. You guys know me, Dr. Veronica, and today I have a guest where we're going to talk about the emotions. This is a transformational lady. She is a graduate school professor and teaches people on, I want to call it resilience. We're going to talk about some of that. And she's worked with some of the esteemed people that we know in the field of psychiatry and psychology, like Dr. Daniel Amen. She's been a TED talker. I like her, a TED talker. Why do they name it TED? Why don't they name it after a woman? But anyway, a TED talker. She's laughing at me. I'm like, why are we naming? We need to have a woman. As many of us women who yak, we need to have something named after women because women are the yackers, and that's why we're here doing this. But Dr. Joan Rosenberg helps people transform. It helps people go from what they don't like being to what they do want to be. And that's where we all want to be. There's a lot of people out there. Now, the first step is that you have to take action by getting in touch with some people like Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And it's not just about listening to her TED Talk and reading her book. She has a best-selling book, Ease Your Anxiety, How to Gain Confidence, Emotional Strength, and Inner Peace. Ease your anxiety. And in a world today where so many people are anxious, we need to learn how to ease our anxiety. So I'm going to welcome Dr. Joan Rosenberg. Thank you for being on the Wellness Revolution.
No, thank you, Dr. Veronica. It's always a pleasure to be with you wherever you are. So thank you.
So first, I always have to know from people, how did you end up doing what you're doing? I know when you were a baby, you came out of the womb, you didn't say, I want to work on people's transformations. How did you end up doing what you're doing?
And my favorite line is so shy that I was Velcroed to the wall, if you're familiar with wallflowers. So I was Velcroed to the wall. And I always saw, what other people were doing. And it was like, they seemed at ease with people. They seemed friends. They talked comfortably. And part of, I suspect, perceived that they had, and that also included self-confidence and self-esteem. And in a kind of what seems to me to be an indirect kind of roundabout way, I ended up really over time and over a period, really it's over the life of my career, kind of figured out what it is that really constitutes self-confidence and what contributes to self-esteem. So it's been, our wounds sometimes become our best friends. And that's part of what happened for me.
Wow. I got to say that's really the case with you, because having met you later on, not in the early stages, I'm like, this woman got it going on. She knows how to do life. She got it. She's poised, and she could tell us all something about herself.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet.
So your TED Talk, you had
yes.
First, tell us what it's like to be a TED talker, because that's people who are speakers and teachers, they aspire to that. I haven't done a TED Talk yet. I thought about it every once in a while, and it's just like, I don't know. People say, you should apply. And I'm like, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
What was it like?
You know what? It was a real challenge. And with the way I framed it to others as I was preparing for it is that it was testing every fiber of my being. I was not, I didn't know, I mean, I wanted to do it. I felt like I had an idea worth sharing. And I'd never spoken for that length of time, predominantly from a script, and it's prepared remarks as opposed to off the cuff, and going in without any notes. So for me, it was developing whatever chops it took to be able to commit enough of my script to memory that I could then jump in and say what I wanted to say. And did I hit every line? No. I missed a couple, but the overall essence of the talk was fully there. Whatever was missed was, weren't crucial pieces. There would have just been extra explanations for what went on. So it was an awesome experience, and it challenged me. And actually, as an aside, I have a second talk coming up at the end of July. So it'll be a second TED Talk at the end of July.
So now you say you like to talk about your favorite subject. What is your favorite subject? I have a favorite subject I want to talk about, but I want to get to your favorite subject first.
It's really centered around this whole idea of emotional mastery and its tie-in to self-confidence and self-esteem. There's so much that goes into it, and there's lots of different angles to tackle it by. But one is how we handle emotions. The second really has to do with my view of kind of redefining emotional strength. So those are some of my favorite topics.
So what does it mean to have emotional strength? I was asking, we were chit-chatting before, and I said, is emotional strength the same as resilience? And you answered, and
well, well, my answer was, think of it as the elements that contribute to resilience. So, and that, I guess, if you will, kind of, can I say, cause resilience? So here's my thinking around it. I think of for me, emotional strength has to do with two major kind of components, if you will. One is what I call being capable, of feeling capable. The second is what I call being resourceful. So we've got two. So one is capable, the second is resourceful. What's involved with being capable is being able to experience and move through what I call 8 unpleasant feelings. And then if we're not able to experience and move through those unpleasant feelings, I don't think we experience ourselves as capable in the world. So it's totally a crucial element. And I can go to the 8 feelings in a moment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We need to know those 8 feelings.
Okay, all right, let me break it down and then I'll go to the resourceful piece. So the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. I can say them again if you'd like. Would that be good, or
that's good. So those are the 8 emotional feelings that we all have at some point or another. And are you saying that there are some people who get bogged down in one of them, and so they can't move forward?
Okay. Down in one or more areas, and as a result, many people end up doing kind of this dance. It's like they're on hot coals, trying to keep away from stuff, and it just doesn't work out. I also am they do that, I don't think that they then feel fully capable and down, or they'll have a difficult time themselves to experience the very thing all of us don't want to experience when things don't work out the way we want them to work out. So those are those 8 feelings the feeling results of things not turning out the way we want. So that part makes sense, yes?
Yes. So what about...
Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay.
What about
the capable part?
Okay, resourceful, being resourceful.
Okay, so let me go to the resourceful piece. The resourceful piece is, so think of the capable piece as internal, the resourceful piece is external. So what do I mean by that? That means that we feel open to and comfortable with being both dependent and so doing stuff alone and being willing to lean on. If we're open to leaning on others, and then it also allows an element that we need stuff, and most of us don't like to ask for help. But if we can see that being resourceful, which means that we do turn to others and we lean on them for help, is actually part of emotional strength, then this represents the other side of emotional strength. So being capable, which means experiencing the eight unpleasant feelings, is one element, and being returned to and known others is the other element, and asking for help is part of that. So both of those then contribute to resilience.
Okay, so it's difficult for people, some people more than others, to deal with these negative emotions. So why is it so difficult for us to deal with a negative emotion? So I deal with a lot of people who are having weight issues, and I notice about people who have weight issues, they're very afraid of hunger, or feeling empty, or not having access to food, or they can't bear the thought that they're not going to be able to have a sweet or a dessert or something like that. What's going on there? Why is it so difficult for us to deal with these negative emotions?
Okay, so let me reclassify for a moment. I don't consider emotions negative or bad.
Okay.
So my first thing is to say, let's change the language, and let's just recast them as unpleasant or unsettling or uncomfortable, but they're not negative or bad.
Okay.
And I do that with whoever I work with, because I don't want people to have the idea that they are negative emotions. They're emotions are available to us to help us protect ourselves, to connect with others, or to create. And so they're either pleasant or unpleasant, and they're just one set of information that we get. Thoughts are another set of information. So why do people actually? The people that you mentioned, the people who are so concerned about the food elements and always worried about hunger or worried about not being able to eat a sweet, I would actually look at all of that mostly as distractions, actually. That they're using the focus on, when I first started early in my professional career, I was working with a lot of women who struggled with compulsive overeating. And so for me, it's easier to be focused on food than to be focused on something they're sad or angry about, or disappointed and angry about, or to feel vulnerable about something and not want to get hurt, which takes us right back to why being able to experience and move through those eight unpleasant feelings is so important.
I see. So you're saying, is it that people focus on something else and they're distracting themselves from really what is going on underlying most of the time?
Bingo, you hit it exactly. Yes.
Okay. So how do we move to the next phase of not, people who are these, I like to say, let's say you're the compulsive overeater, or you're always focused on the sweet or whatever. I mean, yeah. I remember having a guy come in who, his wife would tell me about how he would eat the whole box of Dove bars in one sitting, and yet he couldn't admit that he had a problem. I can stop if I want to. And I was like, wow, interesting. Why is it so hard for people to stop these distractions, or admit that they have a distraction, or admit that they have an issue that needs to be addressed? Because it's not serving you to eat the whole box of Dove bars, especially when you have diabetes at an A1C of 11 and you face blindness and dialysis and amputations and things like that. So people are engaging in these behaviors that are not serving them. Why is it so hard for people to even admit that that behavior is not serving them?
You know what? Because what they have to face underneath that is that much harder. That they're perceiving is that much harder. And here's the interesting thing for me, Dr. Veronica. The eating, for instance, is something that a person has control over. Even if it's out of control behavior, like a whole box of Dove bars. But ostensibly, they're in charge of their eating. They putting it to the mouth, putting it away, right? So they're in charge of that. But when we're not in charge of the fact that we feel, and we're not in charge about what we feel. So people will try to do things, to think things, and to do things because they can be more in charge of that as a way to get away from what they're feeling. Because it's an experience we're not in charge of. Once we're aware of what we're feeling, then we're in charge. But stuff comes up, if I stub my toe, right, I'm gonna have a reaction right away. The same thing, if something disappoints me or makes me angry, that reaction comes, and the way it shows up in my body. And so I have to deal with that. I don't get to be in control of that it even happens. And I think that's why people distract so much, because that they want to have some sense of control over what it is that they're experiencing. And the only way they can do that is that if they do it around what they're thinking, and if they do it around what kind of their behavior. So whether it's drinking, whether it's compulsive overeating, whether it's pornography, I mean, we can go on and on and on about all the different ways people distract.
So when you're saying distract, you're talking about some of the common quote unquote addictions.
Could be, yeah, but for me, there's so many. So let's say I'm always trying to be funny, and I use that as a defense against being vulnerable. So then being funny becomes a distraction. Let's say I don't want to deal with stuff, and what I do is I leave town, or I move because I don't want to deal with the intensity of the conflict. And so now my geographic departures, my going away, is a distraction. If I have feelings about having feelings, it's a distraction. If I always exaggerate and take things to an extreme, it's a distraction. So there's countless different ways to think about how distractions show up. They don't just show up as some of the, yes, definitely, it's the common addictions that we think of, and it goes well beyond that in terms of the kind of, if you will, very nuanced, sneaky ways that we end up distracting ourselves from what we're feeling.
Okay, so some of the common unpleasant emotions that just seem so prevalent today in our culture are fear and anxiety.
Yes.
So tell us about what is the difference between fear and anxiety. And it's
Okay.
almost, to me, they're like the same thing. You're scared of something, that's why you're anxious, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. Actually, I distinguish between the two, and I would actually love for people to correct the language around it, because so let me dive into it. Fear, if psychology likes to describe fear as danger in the moment right now, right? So that's the equivalent of you're standing face to face with the tiger or the mother bear out in the woods, right? So it's like there's danger and it's right now. But most people use the word fear in situations that they're actually not fearful about. So I'm fearful of public speaking. Well, there's no danger there, right?
Yes.
Probably you're not going to be yanked off the stage and then punched.
No.
So there's no real danger, and lots of other things that I'm afraid of asking somebody out on a date. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. But most of that, the use of fear is actually not relevant. The more fitting word would be anxious, and the way psychology likes to define anxiety is that it's diffuse apprehension of the future. So it's just vague sense that something bad could happen. And that's what it is, a vague sense that something bad could happen. But I really kind of dismiss that too, because I think underneath that, it's actually, people will use the word anxious when they're actually feeling vulnerable. When they're feeling like they could be hurt by something. So then they'll go, oh, well, I'm anxious about, so the better fitting word would be, I'm anxious about public speaking, right? As opposed to I fear public speaking, I'm anxious about public speaking, but really it's not that I'm anxious about public speaking, is that I feel vulnerable if I go up and public speak. So for me, even the use of the word anxiety is a cover for typically the 8 unpleasant feelings. And I would much rather have people identify the real feeling that they're feeling as opposed to use the words fear or anxiety. So
okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. So now when we look at our national landscape,
yes,
there were a lot of people feeling they
were
were fearful, but they were really anxious. And when you explained that, it was more like people are feeling more vulnerable for a particular reason. Is that correct?
Absolutely, totally accurate.
Okay.
Yes,
So
they're feeling vulnerable. They're feeling vulnerable because they could be hurt.
Okay.
They might be yanked from their families and deported, right?
Yes.
Right. So that then there's a heightened sense of vulnerability, but that's what they're feeling. They're not feeling fearful and they're not feeling anxious. They're feeling vulnerable. They feel like they could get hurt.
Is some of that vulnerability that people are feeling propagated by what we are seeing in our 24/7 news cycle world? Just because it seems that in practice, what's happening is we're seeing negative stories, but by and large, a lot of the negative stuff isn't really happening.
Right. Yes, absolutely true. And I mean, that's a good reason as to why I don't watch TV. So I'm quite selective about what I want impinging on my brain, and I don't want someone else deciding that for me. I want to decide what I look at by way of news to the degree that I can do that, and then find the news sources that I'm willing to take a look at. But then it becomes. So yes,
there are real threats. There are real threats here, because you mentioned, people being afraid to be deported. I mean, I look at, my life, African-American woman with a husband and, 3 sons who, I watched some very gruesome things happen in real time over the last years. And so that vulnerability.
Absolutely. Yes. So yeah, absolutely true. And so what and it's very interesting. This might take us down a whole different discussion, but yes, you have absolute. It's not that like I have to give you any legitimate right for feeling vulnerable. Of course, you feel vulnerable, and of course, African Americans have been subjected to tremendous oppression. So you, for yourself, for your husband, for your sons. All of that makes total sense. And to the degree that there are greater real threats against, again, what we've seen over the past years, where we dated back to, we dated back countless years, right? To Jim Crow all the way to Michael Brown. It doesn't matter how far back we go. We can pick incident after incident.
So I got to say about that, I don't necessarily walk every day of my life feeling that way. I mean, for me, I can't do that. And but I think a lot of people are having difficulty getting over it. We had a change this is not meant to be a political discussion.
I understand, sure.
We had a change in our administration. All of a sudden there was an increase in anxiety among groups of people, yet these same elements were happening even under the past administration. You see what I'm saying? So all of a sudden it was, we want to say it was out in the open or there was more hostility, but I'm just saying, I don't think, personally, I don't think the level of hostility changed. There was just a few more people being vocal, but I think that the climate has been exactly the same as far as the level of hostility. Now, and even for people who are immigrants and who are undocumented, there was a lot of deportation taking place before somebody stood up and said, we're going to do it. It was happening. In fact, I saw a gentleman who worked in my building who got taken away. You know, I've seen it happen up close and personal way before somebody said, I'm going to do this. It was happening in the country. So what makes the difference in how vulnerable people feel? I mean, how do we control that? We can't control necessarily what's happening outside of us, but we have to get some level so we're not walking around with our cortisol up 24/7 and making ourselves sick. And that's what I wrote my senior thesis about coming out of college, actually, about those psychosocial. Way before it was popular, I wrote about those psychosocial and socioeconomic situations that caused hypertension in the African American community, and this was before it was all popular.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. I've got some people to introduce you to. That's great.
Now it's all been proven that it's right. It's all been proven exactly. Here's my theory. It's been proven right now, but I mean, different. Yes, but it's not just proven. The importance of it is we now know that when people feel a particular way, it is going to have a physical manifestation. So it is important to figure out how to have some measure of inner peace so that you don't make yourself sick, even though you're walking around in a world where there's lions and tigers and bears that can get you anytime.
Right. So let me, you're actually bringing up so many kind of wonderful things to talk about. So let me there's a couple different lines if I can respond to that. One line of it is, I think it's important for us to maintain kind of a low level awareness of our vulnerability. That in essence, all of us are vulnerable all of the time. So where I live, an earthquake could happen at any point, right? Anything could happen at any time. And so for me, it's maintaining a low enough level of awareness that I'm a vulnerable being in the world, that hopefully that helps me choose to live more fully my day-to-day life. So for me, it's that awareness of my vulnerability helps me be aware of making choices about who I want to be, who I want to be, and the kinds of choices I want to make for my life. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I do think that the degree of vulnerability, it's like, has our vulnerability changed, or has our awareness of our vulnerability changed? So sometimes, so if we look at the current political climate, again, not to dig too far into this, the direct talk about threat heightens our awareness of vulnerability. It's not necessarily that our actual vulnerability has changed. It might have. So the actual threats might actually change our state of vulnerability, or it might simply be changing the degree to which we are aware of our vulnerability. And in the case of Caucasians, I think with the transition to this administration, what it did is that it heightened Caucasians' awareness of the degree to which they felt vulnerable, and that they hadn't had to deal with that before.
That's interesting.
And so that what you may have felt on a day-to-day basis or a relative day-to-day basis, now Caucasians for the first time were stepping into your shoes because now they felt it in a manner not entirely parallel, but some degree of parallel to what you feel. And that it's so that it's a heightened awareness, but it's a heightened awareness of the degree to which we feel vulnerable. So the other part of that question for you was so what do we do about it? Vulnerability is an interesting thing. The best way for us I don't want to say the best way, but if we know that we can experience and move through the other 7 unpleasant feelings, then we handle vulnerability better. So if I know that I can experience sadness, if I know that I can experience helplessness, if I know that I can experience disappointment, if I know that I can experience anger, and I'm okay with experiencing all those feelings, then I'm going to be better about handling my vulnerability. So that's one piece of it. So being able to be present to the other 7 unpleasant feelings helps me manage vulnerability better. And then the other part of it is making the choices. It's like, I'm a vulnerable being. Who do I want to be today? What kind of choices about how I want to live my life do I want to make today? And that would be the other side of it.
So the secret to getting there, the secret to getting where you feel some measure of comfort and peace, so that despite, we're in the big bad world and there's a threat to everybody all the time. There is some threat to everybody all the time. I don't care who you are.
Exactly.
And we're getting into who has more threat than the others, and we're starting to fight each other about who gets more threat than the others.
We all have some. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
we all have some. So now how do what's the secret to being able to get to a measure of going through those unpleasant feelings and getting where it's like, okay, I can do this and I'm cool?
So are you talking about actually how to manage the unpleasant feelings?
Yes.
Is that what you're okay? Yeah. So here's my thing on that. What I realized, again, as much as our thinking can mess us up, what I realized is the way we deal with feelings, I think sometimes can mess us up even more. And what I would watch over time is that unpleasant feelings would really get in the way of people's functioning. And the second part of that is, as I spent more and more time figuring that out, it wasn't that people didn't want to feel stuff. It's actually another piece of it. When the neuroscience started to come out, neuroscientists began to talk about how we know what we feel by bodily sensation. That when the neurohormones get fired off in our brain, they activate bodily sensations, and it's that bodily sensation that we identify as a feeling. So what dawned on me is that it's not that people don't want to feel stuff. They don't want to feel the bodily sensation that lets them know what they're feeling emotionally. Yes. And that's what I realized was so difficult for people to tolerate. So if I could help someone tolerate the bodily sensation that let them know what they were feeling emotionally, then I could help them experience and move through that feeling and make their way to do whatever they needed to do. So and then again, more neuroscientists. There's one neuroscientist in particular that talks about again, and I would always talk about feelings coming in waves, which seems to be kind of verified or validated as time went on. And one neuroscientist in particular said that again, those bodily sensations, that wave of feeling lasts roughly 90 seconds.
Really?
So, yeah. So
interesting. 90 seconds, it seems like forever.
I know, well, it can, but it's less than what most people think it is. So people go, I do second. Understand that it's not just,
Oh, are you there?
yeah, I'm
Okay.
here.
I
I don't
just
know what, I don't
something
know where it
happened.
went.
Okay, so let me just tell you what I just heard. You said they last for it's a 90 seconds, and then like a whole section just you cut out. Are you there?
It's, if you can, again, can you hear me?
Now I can. Yes.
Okay, all right, okay. So what I said was, if you can experience and move through one or more 90-second waves of one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings, you can pursue anything you want in life.
So how do you recommend we get through those 90 seconds? Realize that we're feeling it, and is this the, breathe and put on the stopwatch, or
Yeah,
get out your phone and hit it, and so watch the 90 seconds go by, or what's the strategy here?
Probably the strategy is two strategies. One is to take some deep breaths, just roll with it. And then the second is know that it's really not going to last any more than 60 to 90 seconds. And if you start to pay attention, which I cannot tell you the number of people that have come up to me and said what a difference it's made for them to just sit with whatever they're going through. And once they realize it doesn't last that long, they're totally fine with it. And then they go and they're going to face something else. And all they have to do is to remind themselves that it's not going to last that long, and it doesn't, and they move on. So it's made a huge difference. And so it's breathe, stay present to whatever it is you're feeling, and then experience it. And the beauty of it, here's the beauty of it, is that you start to get insights. And you actually feel more inner peace. So you referenced me kind of walking around kind of chill before, right?
Yes.
But I'm walking around kind of chill because I know that I can experience those feelings, and I don't have to get caught up with anything that has me avoiding them. And if they come, they come. Great. I also know that on the other side of that, I'm going to feel inner peace. And I'm going to feel, because I'm not trying to avoid anything within myself. So inner peace comes from that, and so do insights. And if I avoid the feelings, I don't get the insights.
Yeah, I like the way you say not avoiding anything, because I had a friend ask me the other day, do you ever get angry? Yeah, I get angry, and I get angry, I experience, but I don't stay angry. But also I tell people when they're having these negative feelings, I said, okay, I'm going to tell you what my mother told me. And I'm going to tell you this really works. And then I'm going to tell you why it really works. And I was going to say, count to 10. I tell people, count to 10. I said, while you're counting to 10, you're going to take 10 deep breaths in and out. And then I explained to him, similar to what you're like telling people, I explained to him, listen, well, first of all, from a body standpoint, physiology, this calms you down. It calms your body down. So physiologically, when you're counting, and then you're able to think. And information will come to you, so you'll know what to do, how to act and react, and it's not going to just be off the cuff. And so when you're saying sit with it, or just realize you can go through it, I know, a lot of people, they fly into it. They say, I just can't help it. It just happens. You can't help it. And I say, you're going to count to 10. Like my mother said, count to 10 before you do anything or say anything. Count to 10. Oh, I lost you. I lost you. I lost you. Come back.
On this side.
Oh, there we are.
There you go. There you are.
The count. Go ahead. I said count to 10. Start after.
No,
that.
no. Well, the counting to 10 makes perfect sense. And again, part of what ends up happening is that our bodily sensations travel faster than our thoughts. So whether it's your strategy or my strategy, it doesn't matter. They both work, and that you're exactly right. Part of the reason it helps is because the deep breathing. We can't physiologically have two. We can't be all activated and physiologically be calm, right? So the deep breathing, or the 10 breaths, help us stay calm, and it gives our brain time to catch up, our thinking brain time to catch up. And then we can decide how we want to respond. So, your 10 breaths is perfect for that sort of thing, or the deep breath. It doesn't matter how we approach it, but the breathing one way or another helps slow the body down, puts us in a different physiological state, and gives our brain enough time to catch up to think about how we want to handle stuff.
Absolutely. So I know you have a free gift you give to people to help them through anxiety. How can we get that free gift?
That is drjoanrosenberg.com /anxiety-reset.
And of course, I'll put that in the show notes. Of course, it'll be in the show notes, so you could just go. So,
they can.
Go to my website with the show notes on drveronica.com. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you got to go to the website, and it'll be right there.
Yeah, they should be able to access it there.
Wonderful.
And if there's any difficulty with that, you just let me know and make sure that people get it.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk about mean girls, meaner women, but a note about mean girls, meaner women, just a little swatch about, okay, mean girls, meaner women. So what's going on with mean girls and meaner women? And it seems like it's gotten younger, that girls are being not so nice. And I always noticed, women talk about solidarity, but I'm like saying, it hasn't been men who've tried to take me down. It's always been women. So what's going on there? What's going on there?
You know what? Well, two comments on that. The first about it's getting younger and younger. I really think that's a big part of how kids are being socialized. If we're watching, look, TV and movies are set up to stimulate. And part of the way that they make ratings is to do things that are provocative. And what little girls, or little boys for that matter, are learning are one of the ways of problem solving is just to be mean, or to beat people up, or to be hurtful. And so I really think a huge piece to play in this has to do with the media perpetuation of that kind of behavior, and so we make acceptable behavior that's really out of bounds. So that's the first thing. The other around women being hurtful to women is that men are socialized to be able to be angry. Women are not socialized to express anger in ways that are healthy and productive, nor are women typically socialized to be competitive in healthy ways. So when women are angry or competitive with each other, rather than that coming out in ways that are productive and healthful, they come out in ways that are insidious and undermining and undercutting. And if we found ways to help women be more expressive, more directly of the I'm angry at you and let's just deal with it, then that would make a huge difference, and it would be that would be much better.
So women have to find a way. I'm like, we're talking about mean girls, meaner women, and you said women have to be more direct with each other. And I'm like, that sounds like we're making them meaner.
No. In this case, it might be me looking at you and saying, hey, you know what, Dr. Veronica, when X happened, that made me angry. That's not mean. That's not, it's straightforward. And you can say, you know what, I didn't, here's why that I was angry in that way, or here's why I responded that way, or here's why X, Y, or Z, or you know what, I'm angry with you as well. Let's put that both on the table for both of us. And let's figure out how we can solve. There's been no undermining feeling. There's been no, there's not meanness, hostility, and acrimony in it. It's just straightforward feeling, and then you can deal with the problem.
Interesting. Yes, I think we do need to be more direct as women. It's interesting because when you see women who are in places of note, high profile, it's not usually men who are attacking them. It's usually women who are attacking the women. And a lot of times for stuff that's has nothing to do with their skills and talents, but other random things like their physical appearance. And so instead of focusing on the, I disagree with what you said, they focus on, I don't like your fat ankles.
Right, exactly. So it's a distraction from the real issue. We need to be. So it doesn't help to stay unconnected as we. So that's some of my thinking on Mean Girls, Mean Women.
Okay. So how do we begin to have a more fruitful conversation among women? How does that begin? If you go directly to somebody and say, I think women aren't used to even having that type of conversation. Did you go to someone and say, I don't like this, that, and the other thing that happened. I don't know that the other women, oh my God, I remember something I forgot to do. I don't know that the other women would fall in kind and have the discussion necessarily. Are you there? You hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was a little delay.
Okay,
I said, what I'm saying is, I don't, let's say you do this as a woman and say, I feel that this, I don't know that the other woman is going to get out of the woman mode. So I don't know how productive it would be to go and say, when you did this, that, and the other thing, because almost the earth's going to come back at you versus let's sit down and talk about it. In fact, that kind of has been my experience. Hey, this is what happened. I'm not happy with this, or here's what I didn't like this. The comes back versus let me think about that. Let's figure out how to solve this issue. It hasn't been my experience of let's figure out how to resolve this issue so that we can make good and move on.
Well, I think part of it is understanding that communication really is a skill. So if there's going to be a change in the way people relate, then you start by saying, you know what, I want to have how we're relating be different. So I want to start approaching you in a way that's more honest. And my hope is that you can be honest with me back. And that so let's try this out. And so if stuff happens, then I'm gonna lean into honesty. You please lean into it as well. Let's experiment with it. It might be messy for a while as we figure it out. And then if someone tries to avoid stuff, then you call out the avoidance and you go, okay, I'm being honest here. Seems like you're not coming back at me with the same stuff. But stay with honest. This to be a solid friendship. I want things to continue. Let's just stay in the messiness of this until we figure it out as friends. So I think it is possible to do, but it might actually be talking about doing it before you even do it.
Good advice. Well, I appreciate that. So we can make women more soft and cuddly as we make ourselves to be.
Yes, and more direct and forthright at the same time.
Well, Dr. Joan Rosenberg, thank you so much for being on the Wellness Revolution. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Love doing it. And wow, what a great interviewer you are. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more on how to bring wellness into your life, visit drveronica.com. See you all next week. Take care.